My name is Gavin Lynch. I produce music under the name Matador on Minus Records, on my new label Ruckus as well. You'll hear music. We're based here in Dublin, in the city centre, in my studio, my home studio, and we are going to be going through the track The Enemy featuring Felix Da Housecat, track off my forthcoming album. And yeah, we're going to be going through it in depth today. Okay, so yeah, the track that we are going to be delving into today is The Enemy. It's off my forthcoming album, Ructions. It was released a couple of weeks ago as part of the first EP on my new label. And yeah, it seems to be, you know, doing the job, and it's doing the rounds, and yeah, it's been received really well. So yeah, we're going to delve into it today. So first up, when I started this track, it was all about creating something for a certain point in the night, and towards the end of my sets, it tends to be sort of, you know, going in a melodic sort of direction. So just before that point, it needs to be something, you know, dark and driving, and, you know, pack a punch, and this is what this track was really created for, that sort of stage in the night and that sort of stage in my live sets. So yeah, kick and bass line was the starting point for this for me. I think it's something, and we were discussing it outside earlier, it was something that needs to be, you know, taken into consideration, and something that's bypassed, and something that I missed for, you know, quite a bit was the tuning of drums, and the kick drum in particular is something that, you know, I don't think enough attention is paid to it in a lot of the music that certainly a lot of the music I produced in my earlier days. So, you know, there's a lot of workarounds for, you know, issues with tuning of kick drums. People lay on tons of sidechain, pump compression, loads of drastic EQing to make stuff fit. But it was from the get-go, it was all about tuning and making stuff sound proper and sound right and, you know, sound natural. So kick drum and bass line were the good starting points and were foundations for this. Bass line comes out of the Moog, the Voyager. It's running a simple, really simple 16th note bass line, and that's been, well, it's gone straight into the Culture Vulture, being lightly distorted. The cutoff is quite low on the bass line, so it's just a case of adding a little bit of extra rasp and texture on that. And yeah, results are really simple, and again, like I said earlier when we discussed it, this track is, you know, it's a really simple piece. It's almost quite loopy and hypnotic in a lot of ways, and what sort of carries it and gives it variation is the vocal line in it, and we'll discuss that in a bit. But yeah, bass line and kick for now, everything's sitting nice with it. Everything at the minute is we're going into the Neve, the 5088, in stems. So we've kick, snare, percussion, hats, the splashes being the sweeps and the crash cymbals. Then our bass line, our mid-range sort of synth line. It was originally recorded with the Voyager, but, you know, for the exercise today, we're using the Odyssey to create that sound. The SH101 will play the lead at the top, and then finally Felix's vocal on the last channel. Yeah, we can go through that at a later point, vocal stuff. So moving on to different elements of percussion within the track. A couple of snares and claps. With regards drum programming, everything is done on Machina. I use a lot of my original samples I recorded in different recording studios and different environments I have worked over the last 10 years in. And yeah, they're fed into Machine, or else they're dropped straight in as audio files, ambience. And yeah, they're dropped in as audio files as well into the session directly, because they've been tried and tested, and they work. So yeah, from the drum programming with the hats, wee bit of extra percussion. So we have some clavs, 16ths as well, you know, some shakers in there, trying to remember back what I programmed in the original thing. As we were working on the original session, well, I was last night and I was working on, I suppose, reprogramming all the synth lines and trying to pull them back. You know, like I was saying, I had the Voyager, I think about 2 weeks into writing this track, so I wasn't saving patches or anything like that, and a lot of the stuff is old, so it's a case of, you know, remembering the settings or recreating them. Yeah, percussion, some clavs, some extra shakers in there. Alright, so with regards plugins and auxiliaries, the snare, say for instance, the snare is getting some reverb from the Focusrite. The way I've set up this Focusrite reverb from the Scarlet collection is across 4 different auxiliaries. So auxiliary 1 is reverb 1, then I have a second reverb and auxiliary 2, which is a longer tail, a bigger room. Then auxiliary 3 is the first delay, auxiliary 4 is the second delay, Echoplex, space echoes, different sort of things within the Sound Toys Echo Boy in there. So yeah, with regards to the plugin itself, it's you know, dead simple. 4 perimeters there to play with, so there's not really too much room for error. Well, depending on how you use it, I guess. But yeah, it's something that I've used for nearly, whatever, 7, 8, 10 years now. From the get-go, it was one of the first sort of reverbs I used. I have lots of different reverbs available to me there, you know, different waves, and you know, even the ones within Logic are quite cool too, the Space Designer. But yeah, this is something that's worked for me, and Reverb 1, it's a small room reverb. I'll use that constantly on you know, short percussion, clavs, snares, maybe some hats. With regards to the delays on the auxiliaries, it's the Echo Boy by Sound Toys. You have different settings in here and different types of delays, modeling delays. And yeah, I tend to use studio tapes, space echoes, Echoplex, and yeah, you'll hear them with the SH1 and 101 in particular later on. But yeah, that's us plugin wise for effects. With regards some dynamic stuff, yeah, mostly I'm using Synalskis for EQing. Let's just pull one of them up so we can have a look at it. Yeah, that's what I tend to use for EQ. Now, we were talking about EQing earlier, and I don't mind using the plugin for EQ. You see behind me, there's plenty of EQs available to me in the hardware scenario, but in a software scenario, you know, you're pulling up, you know, 10 instances, 12 instances of a plugin, and subtraction is fine for me, but adding stuff with an EQ, that's where the issue lies. So I have no problem using the Synalskis stuff because it doesn't color the sound too much, and again, I'm just subtracting, I'm not trying to add anything to it. So for this, you know, for that scenario, it's absolutely fine for me. With regards to sidechain and compression, there's quite a bit in the music that we make today. I use an SSL bus compressor, the Stereo Bus Compressor Classic, and yeah, that can be used wherever it needs to for sidechain compression. That's going to be triggered by a duplicate sort of kick drum running on a channel. You'll see it on the top there called pump, and that's just a duplicate of the kick drum, muted, but that's triggering any of these compressors for our sidechain. So we have our kick, snare, percussion, and then our hat line. Hats, they're all 909s, 808s in there, and maybe some Lindrum stuff too. I remember using some of the percussive stuff from a Lin. But yeah, you'll see as it progresses, you know, the decay and sustain and release, the ADSRs on the hats, and the 16th hats in particular, they open up and they move around and flex. Also there you can hear 909, our custom ride cymbal coming in, and that always lends itself really well to anything techno related percussion wise. And then with regards transition and sections, it's splashes is what I've named the channel here. So So that's a combination of cymbals, be it crash cymbals and various different pieces recorded with long delays and long reverbs, reversed, and then more reverb and delay added to the reversed audio sample. So yeah, it's sort of constantly recycling different units, different sounds that are already in the session to create different textures and, you know, make the transitions somewhat more fluid and seamless. I find is a method that works really well for me. Well, before we move on from drums onto the synthesizers, yeah, kick drums, the stuff that hasn't been programmed in Machina, kick drum in particular, you asked me about, would be a combination of layers. I recorded a lot of these like back when I was at college down in STC training, and we used different consoles and lots of different outboard, and it was always a case of layering. We got the original drum machines, and then it was a case of layering them. So it was this one, yeah, as you said, they're 808, and I'm pretty sure it was an 808, maybe layered with a lane or something like that, and then you would roll the low end off one or the other and let them operate and take up different frequencies. Laced plenty of compression, parallel compression in particular with a kick drum, just to give it an extra whamp. In some cases, through the Culture Vulture as well, and light distortion can be nice on that. But yeah, as it stands, this kick drum on its own doesn't need too much manners put on it, so you know, it's sounding pretty nice as is. And yeah, that's all there really is to it. Like, you know, I built up quite a collection of drums and samples in particular over the last 8 or 10 years now, and yeah, I've sort of a bank of like 25-30 different kick drums, and yeah, if I need to pull them into Machina or whatever different plug-in to work on tuning issues, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I have ones, you know, in different key to, you know, accommodate these different bass lines or whatever it may be contending with, you know. So yeah, kick drums, that tends to be one of the pieces that, you know, I carry over from different sessions, and yeah, I sort of a go-to bank of samples. Yeah, all the rest are programmed through Machina. I've ran sort of, well, a bit of percussion last night to try and emulate or get back to, you know, because I couldn't find just the original session last night, so I sort of rewrote a lot of it in the early hours of this morning. But let's just take a look at just the drums and see what comes out of Machina. So I'll just run it. That's the original. They're the original recording of it. But just to give you an idea of what it looks like in Machina and the processing that it goes through here on the desk as well. So that's what I've sort of rewritten. So you have a 909 there. It's a produced kit, an 808, and then sort of a reggae kit as well with the tambourine layered on top. But there's some percussion, hi-hat, layer it up, some claps, extra shaker, clav, and then a tambourine on the clap. And then from there, they're going into the 50-51s, EQ and compression. Yeah, very, very slow attack. I want to get out all them transients coming through a very short release time. So we're getting the full feel of all that percussion. Percussion from the drum. Well, firstly, it goes into the 50-52, which is the preamps, then into the EQs and compression, and then it's sort of out through the desk and then back into the computer. And then I tend to monitor what's coming out of the Neve through, if there's a certain extension tree. So I'm getting what's coming back out through the desk and through my computer. So yeah, with regards to percussion on this, preamps, EQ, compression, out through the desk, and you can hear the reverb and difference of the bits and pieces on that. And yeah, I sort of wrote this and it sounds pretty cool, so I suppose. Let's just cut everything out and have a wee listen. Right, so that snare is doing sort of effect all at the bottom there. Hats on the 16, speed 32, be tripling in there. On the percussion, a little rim shot, and your 909 ride. And then what do we have here? There's a shaker, there's an extra clap here in this kit. Again, this is all about layering really in this track with regards to percussion, and in all my tracks. And you know, it's something a colleague of mine just said to me when I was asking him about his drums. I'm not going to mention who it was, but he's one of my favourite producers, and I was having this chat with him, and I was like, how the fuck are you making these drums that are so thick, so fat? And it's just like, Gav, it's all about layering. It is all about the layering. And yeah, I was like, right, straight home with my homework, and I got stuck in and started layering stuff up. And that's what we were talking about, the clap. Like, there's 5 different elements there, you know, tuning, you know, and timing as well, where these transitions, where stuff is happening. And it's only milliseconds you're dealing with. But through this layering, and that's how we're getting these sort of slaps to the claps and the snares. And again, as well with the hats as well. If we want to thicken it up, thicken up hats, you know, there's a few different ways to do it, like, but getting at the original source instead of loads of EQs on one particular channel, you know, let's layer up, say, 2 or 3 different hats and work on it that way and get some original thickness there, so we're not dependent on plugins. And then the 808, that's just going to play our clav. And then I just pulled a tambourine for extra weight on the snare / clap. So yeah, preamps, EQ, compression, and that's what our drums are sounding like. So let's just hear them with the kick. On bass line. Drums, bring back in the original ones. They're a bit different, a wee bit sort of flatter in this mix, but you get the idea. Alright, so moving on to moving off drums now. I think we sort of drums covered. So bass line is, yeah, very simple, 16ths. It's the Moog Voyager. It's going straight into the Culture Vulture. Yeah, at the time when I was recording this, I didn't have the 5088, so that was my preamp I was using at the time for the bass line. And yeah, I wasn't getting loads of fancy compression or any of that shit. Just some sidechain, some EQ, tends to be rolling off 32 hertz, that sort of thing, that really low grumble. You get it in this room in particular, but there's nothing worse than getting that in the club when you haven't rolled off, you know, some dirty shit at the bottom. So 32 hertz tends to be the number I'm sort of rolling off all that low stuff. And yeah, filter's quite, you know, it's quite low on this as well, so it's quite a subby idea. And then there's, I guess, a wee bit of extra texture and rasp added from the Culture Vulture. So let's have a listen. Maybe let's take out some of that percussion so we can hear it. So that's the original setting there, the original recording of it. Yeah, it doesn't do much regards melody. It's a straight up subline. It's supposed to sit there, and yeah, there's not a lot of movement in it. I can just mute that, and I've recreated the bass down here, and that's it running through the Moog. You can't really see it here, but it's pretty easy program. That's just the filter opening on it, showing it is live. And yeah, that's fed through into the Culture Vulture here in this case. There's 3 different settings on this. This is the mastering version, which just means there's indented pots. It's nothing too fancy. normal, and with some drive, with more drive. You can starve the valve with the bias on it. That's actually nice at that point there. Yeah, I didn't, like I said, have the desk at the time when I did record this originally, but just to show you the way I do record bass lines now that I have it, very similar idea to the Machina, the way the drums are recorded, straight into the 5052 preamp, EQ and compression. So if you push them gain pots, you can create something quite nice with that. And yeah, it's an EQ, it's an amazing preamp. It's Rupert Neve, doesn't really need any selling, you know, that kind of way. Silk textures, red and blue on that. Again, lovely feature, just to sweep through it. I don't know if you'll pick it up. It's quite subtle. And then over into the 5051 with EQ. You can really push them, and yeah, really get into the sculpt and the end of it. That bass line's pretty much squashed, so it is. It's squashed on that, and then it's brought in here, and then it's triggered with sidechain compression with the SSL. Right, so bass line is going from our Moog Voyager into the 5052 preamps, 5051's EQs, then compression, and then I have my recording of the bass line in there in a WAV 24-bit, and yeah, from there then I'll apply the necessary plugins where I can push and pull stuff and I can move stuff around. So with a bass line, and with a lot of the bass lines in techno and in dance music, they need to work alongside their buddy, the kick drum, and the two of them are, you know, they tend to be the pulse of the environment that they're played in, you know, and people respond to them more so than any of the other elements in a lot of cases in these tracks. So very important, kick drum and bass lines. The bass line sidechain compression, it's the pump up here at the top, which is a duplicate of my kick drum, and it's sending here. So it's kick, we'll change that to pump, same thing. And yeah, there you go, triggering the compression. That's obviously way too much. Some people might say it's not. Well, that's where it's applied, working with my kick drum there. After that, EQ. So for some reason my frequency analyzer isn't working on that, but we can see here it's all scooped out there. I tend to roll stuff off at 32 hertz at 18 dB. That's sort of that's where I find a lot of the difficulty comes, particularly when I'm at the mastering stage of it. You know, it's just warping up and taking up so much energy, all that stuff down there, and like my old lecturer, Les Stapleton, used to always say to me, like, you know, 1-2 hertz down. Once you go below 80, 1-2 hertz, 3 hertz makes all the difference, because it's such a delicate and such an important range that needs attention. It really does. And yeah, I'm not getting my frequency analyzer there, but you know, it's an important thing to have there as well, just to monitor and make sure everything's sitting there tight. At the high end of it, yeah, just rolled off at 2K 12 dB, just cutting any nasty fizzle or any little hiss I might have at the top. After that, it's Kramer, this tape emulator. Yeah, scrolling through presets on this and then just modifying it from there. where you want, wherever it sits in the mix. So just cutting it out. It tends to be quite subby. I'm just gonna hair everything there. So that's it. Off, on. It's just giving it a wee bit more sort of mid-range, just a wee bit more grip. That's the culture vulture kicking in there. Different settings on it. I'm operating on P3 with this, about 2.5 on the drive. And yeah, so plugins in, plugins out. So they're getting dirtier. And yeah, you can hear it in the room. It's sort of swallowing the whole fucking room up here. So that's us all kicked in there with the bass line. So simple, dead simple bass line. I think as it opens up, as it progresses, let's just bring some stuff back in here. But again, it's all about the sub with this bass line, because the next element that I'm going to introduce, you'll see that it would totally be fighting it if I left it up there at that range. So we're just bringing the cutoff on that down to 250. It's just doing that low end pulse, exactly what we're after. Alright, so next element I'll show you in audio form first. That's our bass running live now through the Moog. So the next sound was a sound that was originally programmed on the Moog. I'm just going to pull out some of our other elements so we can focus on this. Alright, so that's it. It's a mid-range sort of thing, and again, my preamp at the time was the Culture Vulture. So this was, I was like, you know, record the bass, and I recorded whatever, 32 bars of that, and it was straight on to recording this element. And yeah, it's a simple enough thing. If we just pull up the MIDI on it, I have that here. Behave. Machine it. And that's what the riff looks like after it's been corrected, and all this stuff would have been played in. Well, obviously not a 16 bass line that fast, but you know, sort of slower riffs tend to be played in and then corrected, quantized accordingly. But this, yeah, it's a Moog, just playing a mid-rangey thing, just going down through the scale. If I just bring it on so we get off the audio, the original recording, and have a listen to a synthesizer doing it today. Now, our bass line is currently running, the Voyager's running that, so I don't have two Voyagers, sorry, but I do have an Odyssey over there. So for today, let's pull that in and use that instead. Alright. Doesn't sound as good, but fuck it. Wee bit of, well, it was glide, would have been the perimeter on the Moog that I used, but Rudimental will do here in that case. So again, like a lot of my synths now, recording into the preamp, EQ and compression. Compression tends to be mild. Subtraction, I don't really need to add a lot to EQ. I'll focus on the different perimeters within the synthesizer to get the sound where it needs to be before I'll go down the EQ route. Yeah, so this today again into our preamps, EQ, compression, and then back into the system. And yeah, let's have a wee look here. we listen with everything else. That's it sitting in the mix. Again, that's going into the Culture Vulture, or was the Moog going in, but the Odyssey today going in there. And yeah, it's just a case of working the set and I'm working the distortion on the actual Culture Vulture. Get it to sit in the mix. And again, bias is being kicked in here. We're starving the valve. I'm taking a lot of the low end sort of out of it naturally by starving the valve as opposed to using EQ in this later section. Sculpting wise, yeah, not a lot done on the EQ with it, and as it progresses, it gets a wee tail as it finishes at the end. Alright, so yeah, mid-range line that's being played by our Odyssey here. Let's just have a wee look at what's going on with the plugin section within the system. So looking at it here, we've the Soundtoys decapacitator, which is modelled on the Thermionic Culture Vulture over there in the corner. It's a distortion, you know, let's just pull it up. And yeah, well, it does replicate the Culture Vulture in many ways, distortion wise. It adds an element of warmth to it. I don't find pushing it as much as that achieves the same thing. I find, you know, with the hardware version, when it's pushed, it really lays on something thick and something special. But I find just when I push this, like most plugins that I push, I find that yeah, there's discrepancies there and there's holes basically. So this is ideal for, you know, if you have again many instances of it, because there's only one of them there. You can take 2 channels. So if you have many instances of where you need this sort of texture over a sound, it's ideal for that. Or if it's just a small touch of something gritty that you need. So let's just mute the elements and just listen to that. So that's it. It's a lot brighter without it. And then if I was to A/B it with the original, which is alright, that's that. Sort of heading in that direction with the addition of the decapacitator or decapitator, whatever. Okay, so I'm muting that and going back to the live version of the Odyssey. Again, EQ here, no frequency analyzer for some reason. Pulling out some of the low end, some of the high stuff. So we're rolling off here at about 157, 160 hertz. It's allowing us a bit of room for a bass line to move around. This has to be heavily sidechained due to the consistency of the sound. It's not sounding in full effect. I'm just pulling it back to where it needs to be. After that, some compression is to flatten out just the warpiness, and sometimes it just adds a wee bit too much click for my liking. So it's just to flatten it out, another round of compression, and then finally some tape at the end. So muting the elements. So really putting manners on that stuff. So there's just different rounds of compression and EQ, and that's after, you know, the outboard stuff does its work. So yeah, there's a wee bit of work there, but the original source sound is rich in texture, and it's, you know, it's as good as it's really gonna be, and it's just down to you how you apply the different dynamics, different EQ accordingly once it's sitting in the mix. Bassline is a bit fluffy because we're running live and all that, but listen, it's tighter. That's the original recording of the bassline sitting with it. And bringing back in some of the elements. And then the extra drums. So again, just layering, and them extra drums were just written last night, just for today, just to show you what was done, but it actually worked quite nicely. Alright, so let's just pull back some of these elements. Okay. Another thing we featured in here is our SH101. Possibly one of my favorite synths of all time. I've used it quite extensively over the last 5 or 6 years now. I got a lend off the college of my very first SH101, and I was bidding online, I would say, for a good like 6 months. I was really dragging it out. So, and the head of the college, Les, was like, I want that SH101 back. I just dragging the shit out of it for months and months until I bought one. But I got so much work done with it, and it was my first sort of real, like I got like the micro Korg, that was the very first one I got, but the 101 was the first one I got that I really connected with, and it was, I guess because you're not going into the background with different parameters or settings or presets. What you see is what you get with it, a couple of envelopes and a few oscillators, and you're limited by a lot of standards to where we are today. Even looking at the Voyager, stuff like that, the amount of in-depth parameters that you can get into and tweak and tune. So with the SH101, it was the case of really keeping it simple. And yeah, when I got that, I was churning out tracks, and quite a few tracks using it, because yeah, it was just so quick just to pull up all these really cool lead lines, bass lines, and it was just a really rich sound source, you know. And yeah, again, right through to today, I'm using it, so I am, and pigging out in it, because yeah, it does what it said in the tin, like it really does. Nearly. Right, so that's just basically a sweep into the SH101. That would have been a case of taking one hit and with a big long sort of delay on it with a big tail, and then a delay as well, maybe a ping pong delay or something like that on triplets, on eighths or quarters, and then it's bouncing that audio with the reverb and the delay via auxiliary, bringing it back in, reversing it, and applying more delay to it, so you're creating a sweep up and then a sweep sort of out. And that's where I suppose you get the continuity with your lead lines and the transitions, and how we're going from one section to another, or how we're dropping or introducing a sound in. And I use this method of using the original sound source with effects and bringing it back in, and yeah, you get continuity through that method. It works for me, and yeah, this is what it sounds like. Here. Simple riff. Let's just have a wee look at the riff itself. Yeah, really simple, D minor buzz, and with this again, it's getting some compression, wee bit of EQ on the original record, and I'll delve into the live version of it. And then as you can hear, I'm just opening up the frequency and the release on the envelope towards the end. Also, another thing is the auxiliaries, the delays and the reverbs. I'm pushing the sounds on them because this section is sort of where it's about to kick in for the main kick in. So this is the main sort of drop, I guess, and it's just a case of opening auxiliaries on them, on the reverbs and the delays on the SH101. That's giving it, creating this extra atmosphere and yeah, creating that, or leading towards that moment of impact when it all kicks in. You'll hear the reverses on it with the effects that sort of introducing the sound, and yeah, extended feedback on the delays for when it's tailing out. Pretty simple lines, lead line, but again, like I said, really simple track. All the movement and how the track is developed and how it's carried and its variation comes from the vocal. A lot of the music is almost, call it almost loop orientated, basically. I hate to say it, but yeah. So let's go back and just hear a live version of it. That's how it was originally recorded, that's what it sounded like. And this is it, running live now. Okay. Sort of covered that bass line. Alright, SH101. So as it's opening, it's just a case of ADSRs. We can play with portamento settings on it as well. Not too much of that. And yeah, the 101, like all my synths now, exact same buzz. It's going into a 5052, into a preamp, EQ, and then compression. Let's just grab that on loop. Yeah. So yeah, you can get into different ends of sculpting on this. And yeah, for this I found when I come back, because I've gone back and I've mixed quite a lot of my music again through the console and rebounced the stems for my live setup. And for this one in particular, it was into the 5033, which is it's Neve's 5-band EQ compression, or EQ, parametric EQ, and you can really dial in to some of these frequencies on this. And the cue points are really special. Just to bypass it without, and then with. You can hear the difference there. It's night and day, to be honest. And then with the elements, so that would have, with regards to the recording of the different sections, yeah, that's all done live. So it is. I'm gonna have to be opening releases and frequencies, opening all that stuff up. Yeah, and that's how it was recorded all in one take. But yeah, a few different takes, and yeah, you're taking the best of them, and yeah, that's what the 101 does. Once it's recorded down through all that gear, back into the computer, and yeah, it's all about the auxiliaries really on this. Like I mentioned earlier, the delays and the reverbs. So with regards to plugins on it, yeah, just a wee bit of mild pump compression on it, just because some of the hits are bang on the kick. So yeah, I don't want to be swallowing up too much energy of the kick drum, so that's why I'm getting another wee level of sidechain compression on there. With regards the auxiliaries, it's getting all 4 here, which is 2 reverbs and 2 delays. Now I can, well, let's see, SH101. I use this, the SSL, the Nucleus, as well. It's a big remote basically, and I can use it. Let's see. In this setting here, go. So it's just, I can push the delays, the auxiliaries on them. I can push the reverb on them as well. As the different sections opening up. And that's really it. So, as the track is developing, you know, there's more reverb, there's more delay as different sections, you know, lend space for this stuff to develop. It does so accordingly and fits. Alright, you can hear that already, it needs to be tightened up. Too much, but you get the idea of it. It's more hands-on this way, and you know, it's a nicer way to work than fucking playing around with a mouse all day. You know, so playing with the settings, the auxiliary. I'm getting the, you know, a really nice piece of original audio there recorded in, and there you go. Like, it's, you know, it's in its rawest form there, and then it's down to me after that point how much of the effect I'm sending and how much of a, you know, a climax we're building towards, basically. So it's down to yeah, for me, getting something sounding original and clean, and then adding to it from there. But you know, with the auxiliaries I have going on here, you know, nothing set in stone, so I can push and pull stuff accordingly. All the elements synth-wise are explained to some extent there, and that leaves us with the vocal. So the vocal is Felix Da Housecat. Felix, how it came about was, well, we had the track. I had the track, pretty much the bones of it down, and Dave, Dave was like, let's get a vocal on this. So I thought, like, you know, well, I was sort of the mindset of what Felix turned out to be. Where are we going to fit a vocal in this? But thankfully he was in the studio at the time, and he was in the mid-recording, and yeah, he just slot that afternoon, and he was like, right, I'm going to try and lay something down. He tried to lay something down, couldn't get it laid down. He rang up and he was like, I don't know where I'm going to fit this vocal. And then yeah, he sent us this a couple of hours later, and we just laid it over the sort of dub mix. We were in Barcelona at the time, and it was like, right, that is fucking working. So it didn't need that much work. From what I heard of the original, it was like he had three different layers in there, and between two different octaves of his own vocal, be it pitched or recorded. I don't know what way he did it, but he calls it Felix's voice box, and this is the processing chain that he uses. It's magic, and it's secret. That's all I know about it. And so I wasn't going to ask any questions when he delivered this. All I knew that it was going to take a wee bit of fitting into the track, but you know, there wasn't a lot of work to do there. It was on the money. So the original vocal, well, this is what we got basically. So let's just mute some of these elements back. So we've got some just simple hits of his vocal, and then yeah, they're affected very similar to the SH101, if not the same delay, again creating continuity with the splashes on the delay. The SH101 is getting the exact same delay treatment setting wise as Felix's vocal, so whatever the ping pong delay setting is, that's what it's getting. And yeah, again, continuity across the auxiliaries with the leads leads to continuity overall, I feel. So the vocal had to scoop some of the low end out. That would have been done again with the Synalskis plugin, just rolling out low end and fitting it accordingly. It's already done, but just so you can see, that's how it would have went down. Would have been a wee bit of sidechain and compression as well to bounce that around the kick drum. And yeah, dynamic wise, that's what that would have got. Auxiliaries, then it's getting the Echo Boy, and in this instance Space Echo, I think, done the business. Tend to get a really nice sort of feedback, extended feedback, I think, with the Space Echo. Something that I'm a big fan of, to be honest. The vocal I brought back in when I got the desk, and I give it tape saturation 50-42, and yeah, it's just about an extra texture on it, you know. And if we just pull the tape out there, we just mute that kick for a wee second.
We cannot change our past.
Okay.
That's how it's meant to be. Don't be afraid to see.
Push it.
Nothing in life is free.
So it's this again. It's like it's that element of tape compression, a wee bit of texture there as well, and not really pushing it, not making it work too hard. In some cases, pushing 3 amps and pushing, you know, different units like this is going to create something unusual, something different. And the higher end the product, sometimes it can be pushed that wee bit more aggressively, and it can cope with it a lot better, you know, that kind of way. Yeah, the tape here for me at 42 is it's something that I'm really, really, really impressed with, you know. It's just that extra layer of something, you know. Yeah, so that's the vocal in there. Let's just pull some of the other elements in. Let's get a feel for how everything's sitting together.
They say we have no hope. What do you want from me? I want to keep my soul. This is priority.
Okay. Again, it's the original record, so we can open, push, and pull these as we need. Should have released on that.
This is no state of mind. This is reality.
Yeah. All right. Now, from that point, that's all the recording pretty much boxed off, so it is. And yeah, I move on to stems then from here on. Once everything's recorded and I'm happy with effects, how stuff's blending and how stuff's generally recorded and how it's sitting, I move on to the next stage, which is, I guess, stem mixing. And yeah, it's all about this then. And I don't know if you can see from over there, but the desk is sort of laid out. It's custom made to whatever way you want your settings on it. But I've laid out 1 to 8 in mono, and then 9 to 16 are stereo channels. So that's giving me 24 channels of audio, available to me. And then I have inputs as well. I've inputs at the top there, so I send my auxiliary groups, so reverb 1, reverb 2, delay 1, delay 2 are also sent in there, and they have their own section on the console. So yeah, all the recording tends to be done in mono. I'm using a lot of mono synths, and apart from the likes of the Prophet, sometimes the Voyager. But yeah, everything then is sort of bounced into stereo form with the respective partners, be it hi-hats with shakers and rides, are grouped into one, and so on and so forth. But so the layout here is kick drum, snare plus clap, then the percussion, then the hi-hats, then the splashes, crash cymbals, etc. Then our bass line, the Moog Voyager, then the Odyssey, which is doing that mid-range sort of synth line, and the SH101, and then the vocal with the addition of the tape on top of that. Then this section is laid out, reverb 1, 2, delay 1, 2 at the top, and then this section here is my group section. So in this case, and in most cases, I'll group my drums. So yeah, my kick, snare, perc, hats, splashes are all going into my group bus there, and then from there they're getting a 50-43, which is well, mild compression is what it's getting over the top of everything, considering it's already, you know, had a wee bit of work done on it. And that's just sort of, I don't know, to bring everything together. I'm a big fan of the SSL, the stereo bus compressor. And I think this is, this series here is something that really rivals it. And I'm more than happy to slap that over the stereo bus as well as my group insert, you know. Let's just mute our live instruments and MIDI, and let's just go back to what our original recordings were. And done, and our SH101. Alright, so let's have this. Let's true to this. So in regards to mixing, yeah, all drums lead to the groups, and yeah, then you have the mix insert over the stereo bus, and like I was saying, it's the 50-43. So if I just, for my own ears, which are knackered, but mix insert in, you'll really hear it kicking in now once I kick drum and all the elements are combined. But out, in, and then out. You know, packs a punch, and that's what it's about. It's just bringing all the elements together. In.
We cannot change our past. That's how it's meant to be.
And then if you feel the need for additions, in this case, it's drums, extra drums. Just missing our Odyssey there.
You know the enemy. Responsibility. This is no state of mind. This is reality.
It's sort of just them elements of percussion I'm really after. So it gives it that spastic roll, as in the tune.
They say we have no hope. What do you want from me? I want to keep my soul. This is priority.
All right. Just to mention while we're on this at the minute, let's just pull back some of these elements. A couple of features, well, there's a couple of things. There's plenty of nice things in this console, but one of them is when we're working in stereo stems and we're working in stereo tracks is the width function. Sorry, width function. If I can just turn this a wee bit, we can really hear how it's evident in these sections. Let's turn our width up on our percussion and then our hearts. Just really opening up our stereo field there. There is a width, there's a width function on that 8816 summon bus over there, and yeah, it's alright, so it is, but to have that sort of stuff available to you on every channel, you know, there's a lot to be said for that. Same with the hearts. Let's pull it down. And turning the width up on it. Out. In. And then with the other elements. We would have poke.
This is no state of mind. This is reality.
All right. Now width out, and then
This is no state of mind. This is reality.
all right. That's sort of me happy with my mix then. Stem mixing, 8 or 9 stereo tracks, whatever it is, and I'm happy on the mix. We're bouncing it's down to 24-bit WAV, and then mastering stage. Now in a lot of cases, you know, we discussed this earlier as well, mastering, you know, is best on, you know, out of house, so to speak, and it's good to get a second set of ears or a third set of ears, be it if there was a mix engineer involved as well. But a mastering engineer, yeah, it's something that we all should be really using a lot more often than we do in dance music, because in most cases it's about finishing a track and it's about getting it out there for a road test really, and really, you know, try it out in a festival or a club or whatever at the weekend. So it's getting the track finished, and then there's a mastering chain there that we all have our own personalized ones, and whatever we use in them, you know, it's all top secret usually and all that. But yeah, it's what most of the DJs and what most of my colleagues tend to play out are the mastered versions that I knock up in like 10 or 15 minutes here kind of thing, because by the time the release comes around, which is 2 months later, you know, it's been remastered by a proper mastering engineer, and it's all ready for vinyl or whatever format it's going out on, and yeah, in most cases it does sound a lot better, you know, and it will sort of respond a lot better on different systems because it's been tested and you know, by someone who does this day in day out, you know, the final product mastering. So with me, yeah, it's just a case of Logic again, Logic 10. I'll try. Let's see if I have the Enemy master. There you go. Well, there is different mastering sessions in there, but let's just have a look at this anyway. So, yeah, there it is. You know, it's probably not conventional by any means. It's yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but it's sort of it gets done what I need done, and let's just go through it briefly, I guess. So it's a case of spreading out a lot of the work I find with mastering, just to simplify things, and instead of getting, say, one compressor or one limiter or whatever the dynamic unit is, instead of getting that to push something 6 dB, I'm spreading it across, you know, 4 units or 6 units, each doing 1 dB each. That's the easiest way I can sort of break it down. So yeah, I'm using, in this case, like, you know, there's like the Logic built-in limiters, which look absolutely rubbish, but the sound great. You know, there's a nice slap to them, and you know, it's all got to do what happens before as well. You can't, you know, polish a turd, and a mastering engineer can only turn something good into something amazing if it's good in the first place. You know, he can't turn shit into something good, but he can turn something good into something sounding pretty slick. You know, and yeah, it's down to, you know, the lead up to this point as well. It can't be, you can't just hand someone something and expect magic back. So there's a lot of work, as you've seen, gone into the recording and the processing before this point. So all I'm really doing here is I'm turning stuff up. You know, I'm trying to leave, in most cases, between 8 and 6 dB of headroom there. So there's, you know, there's room to push and pull stuff here at this stage. Lots of monitoring, lots of meters. It's either the multimeter or PAS in there from Waves, and they're both my analyzers. Some mild compression there. EQ, keeping an eye on the low end again with the Synalska stuff. Let's pull that over to view. Yeah, tape machine, which I'm quite fond of. And then just the final round of limiting at the end. So you've sort of 3 limiters there in total, all doing different things, but you know, primarily the one at the very end is where the brick wall is. You know, there's stuff getting through on the other ones. So yeah, like I said, it's about, in most cases, turning it up. So like, hopefully I'm not going to blow your ears off. You can see it's clipping on the desk there already, what's sent to it, you know. Yeah, at this stage, you know, you can see there that there's not a lot being pulled out by that final stage of limiting there. You know, a lot of the transients have been corrected, manners have been applied. So, you know, the limiters don't have to work as hard here, turning stuff down, and there's not as many typical discrepancies that you get there from harsh limiting, I find. So that's why I have these different rounds of compression on the lead up, you know, to the final limiting stage. And that starts with the original recording. That starts with recording that bass line on the Voyager fucking 10 hours ago or whatever it was, you know, that kind of way. That's where it starts, and this is where it ends. But it's so important at this stage that I got that bass line right back then, because it's just making my job so much easier now at this stage. And if it's a mastering engineer, he's gonna love that, so he is, you know, because at the end of the day, we all want to be working with something good, and we want to enjoy our job. And if it's a headache and you're trying to deal with someone else's mess, it's not good for anybody. So you want everybody on form working at their best, and by delivering nice mixes, you know, I think it's yeah, it's part of the pie that leads to something sweet, you know. So yeah, mastering end of it, that's it, you know, that's what I do. And I'll bounce them down, did it down to 16-bit wavs, and then a 320k MP3, and then that's shipped off to the boys. And yeah, I'll get feedback over the weekend how stuff's gone down. I'll play it myself in the live scenario. So it's getting road tested, pushed and pulled, and then tweaked the following week when I come back in here. So yeah, that's my process. All right, lads, thank you so much for joining me here today. I've learned some stuff here by going through this exercise, and yeah, I really hope you did too. So thanks for having me, and see you all soon.